Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Block Party number 55. We are here uh, kicking off an introduction to food healers. What is food healers all about? What is it? How does it work? What's the big idea? So I'll start off with the big idea, and then I'm going to invite um, Sarah and Annie and Sister Ivy and everyone really to chime in with important parts and details around food healers. But the fundamental basic idea of food healers is this: that we feed, that we provide everyone with access to plant-based foods for free, and that we literally prepare and deliver these plant-based foods to every community and, in fact, every neighborhood, and ultimately every major intersection that people can just walk to and get their daily or weekly supply, whatever frequency, of plant-based foods for free, right? And from here, there's a lot of directions that we can take the conversation, but one of the most obvious ones is, well, wait a second, who's going to pay for it all, right? And so let's address that one first, because that gets to the fundamental viability of it. As we're going to see as we get into the conversation, the cost of provisioning really healthy and absolutely delicious, we're talking gourmet, plant-based stew as the fundamental unit and the fundamental thing that we need to deliver first and foremost. The cost of doing this, sourcing the raw materials, preparing the stew, and delivering it, can be brought down to an absolute minimum. We're talking about, on the order of, like, I don't know, 10 cents per meal, literally that inexpensive. Why is that? So we'll talk about, number one, why that is, and then number two, how we're going to fund that, because even 10 cents a meal times, I don't know, 2 billion meals per day is still a lot of money. That's still $200 million per day. And that's a lot of money. Okay. But we'll talk about those two aspects. First of all, why so inexpensive? So in terms of healthy, immune boosting, plant-based stew, there are two main classes of ingredients. One are the ingredients that come in basically dried form, like whole grain rice, beans, lentils, and other legumes. I'll just call these kind of the carbohydrates and legumes, because I would also include, potatoes, pasta, etc., in that category. Okay, basically the dried stuff plus potatoes, the stuff that's like bulk carbohydrates and legumes. Okay, and that's incredibly economical if you buy it by the truckload. I mean, insanely economical. Like lentils, probably one of the most nutritious foods on the planet. If you buy them by the 40-ton truckload, the cost is less than 10 cents a pound. And if you go to the grocery store and buy a bag of dried lentils, it's around a couple of bucks for 12 ounces or whatever of lentils, less than a pound. Put it in a pot with a bunch of water, cook it up, and it just makes this whole giant pot of lentils. And you think, oh, that was a really good deal for just $2. Well, if you buy it by the truckload, that huge pot of lentils, less than 10 cents per pound. So it's like vanishingly inexpensive. I mean, it's just like, it's almost nothing. That's for the bulk carbohydrates and bulk legumes, right? Super inexpensive. We were thinking that produce would be the most expensive part of this, buying the fresh produce, because we don't want to just have beans and rice. I mean, yeah, a person could live off of beans and rice, but we're talking gourmet, super nutritious, immune boosting. We need fresh produce for that. So we were assuming, well, that's going to be the most expensive part. And then along came Sister Ivy and turned our world upside down. And she explained to us the following model, which she implements for We Are Uno. Sister Ivy goes to the farmers markets, and the way the farmers markets work, like in Los Angeles, it's very simple. Local farmers, who might be an hour away, 2 hours away, whatever, they make that trek to Los Angeles because they can sell their produce at a substantial margin, right? And everyone loves it because they get fresh organic produce and they pay top dollar for it, and they're happy to because it supports the local farmers and yada yada. And it's way fresher than what they get in Ralph's and yada yada yada. Okay. Well, because the margins are so good, the farmers almost always bring more than what they can sell, because the last thing they want to do is stock out and not be able to meet the demand, because then they lose customers and they lose the opportunity to make that money. So they bring basically more than what they can sell. So at the end of the day, what do they do with the surplus? Well, they're not going to schlep it back to the farm and bring it back next week because it's no longer fresh. So they're happy to donate it. So the ingredients in the stew that we thought were going to be the most expensive turn out to be free. Now, sure, you've got the cost of going and picking them up. But since most of this is going to be operated by volunteers, you don't have labor cost, you just have fuel cost. And since we can do this with electric Tesla trucks, we eliminate the fuel cost and we're down to the cost of electricity, right? So we're talking about being able to produce large quantities of immune boosting plant-based stew for on the order of 10 cents per serving, ballpark, right? For really, really delicious gourmet stew. Because the thing is, and this is where the celebrity vegan chefs come in, right? Who, as we all know, that a grand master chef, and welcome, James, welcome. We're recording right now. We're talking food healers. Great to have you here. Feel free to chime in anytime. And if anyone wants to pause recording at any time, just say so. I'm happy to pause recording. No problem. But as anyone knows, a master chef can take any mix of ingredients and by tweaking and dialing in the ratios and cooking times and cooking methods and all that, can produce a masterpiece. And here we're talking about starting with the bounty of fresh produce of all different kinds, and whole grain rice and legumes and potatoes and all kinds of just wonderful stuff from nature's bounty in large volume. And so here's the key. We've got all these large volumes of inputs coming in, ingredients coming in. The celebrity vegan chef will tweak and tweak and perfect and perfect. Once they have the formula right for that mix of raw materials that's hot and fresh that week, fresh and available that week, we simply crank it out. We reproduce it and produce large quantities of super nutritious, immune boosting plant-based stew. And then it's just a matter of logistics for delivering it, right? Now, thus far, we've been, Sister Ivy's been focused on the houseless camps. Meanwhile, Sarah and Annie and others in Los Angeles are pioneering taking this food and delivering it in parks. But in all cases, it's free, fresh and free, and absolutely nutritious and delicious. And so that's the cost side, bringing the cost way, way down. Now, the other side of the funding that I was going to talk about, as I promised, is okay, fine. It costs very, very little, but very, very little times millions of servings is still a lot of money. So how are we going to contend with that? And the answer here is very simple. As people learn about what we're doing and how cool it is and how nutritious, delicious, and plant-based, and therefore good for Mother Earth and good for people, and how efficient it is and how cost efficient it is, people are going to be happy to donate money to it, to fund it. So I don't think we're going to have any problem getting funding. Anyway, with that, I've covered the basic logistics and the funding piece. And at this point, I'd like to pause for any questions. I'm going to pause recording just for a moment. Okay, I'm recording again. So there's a question about the ultimate goal and value. The ultimate goal is actually multiple goals. One is to feed everyone. By making the food available to everyone, obviously there are people who are going to say, oh, thanks, but no thanks. I'm going to keep on doing my own shopping or going out to eat at restaurants or whatever. And that's fine. It's not like we're trying to force everyone to, to eat our food, but we want the food to be available to everyone. That's the key. So with that, we ensure that everyone gets to eat, not just people with money. Christopher says, eat our food, and I totally agree. We want people to eat our food. So one of the goals is feeding everyone, ending hunger and ending malnutrition, okay? Another ultimate goal, Ray says it sounds communist, and that's fine, whatever. I don't really care how it sounds. We just got to get it done. And, but that's a good point. And so one goal is ending hunger and ending malnutrition. Oh yeah, go ahead, Sister Ivy. Yeah, go ahead.
I would like to say about that communist comment that we have another take to that, which has got nothing to do with communism, at least not to me, and I'm sure for the people I know, because we are more concentrated in loving each other, helping each other. I don't know if that sounds communist to someone, and I'll be fine. I respect whoever thinks, but the aim is to love and help each other. And I think we need to make that clear, because we don't have a political agenda here, right? And we don't have a specific, fighting for a way of government and whatever. As far as I know, and I hope it is, that's not our battle. So I just thought that it would be correct to say we really don't have anything to do with that. Our aim is to love and help each other and transform this world from hatred to love, from competition to collaboration, from each one looking at your own thing, me, to cooperation. Is that right? Something to say that?
Beautiful, Sister Ivy. Totally agree. Totally agree. So see, these are multiple goals that we're seeking to achieve. So in addition to feeding everyone, making sure everyone is fed and that everyone is fed very nourishing, super healthy, immune boosting plant-based foods. Another goal is to stop the spread of pandemics, because by boosting people's immune systems, right? Another goal is inspiring the world to go plant-based, because even the people who don't choose to eat the food that we're making available to everyone will hear about it. We're creating this huge, inspiring story of people coming together to feed everyone plant-based food, 100% plant-based diets. And they'll say, a lot of people will say, well, gee, I didn't think you could really have a satisfying diet eating 100% plant-based. Well, here, give it a try. Everyone eventually will try it and they'll say, wow, this is amazing. You're telling me all this is being provided for a net cost of 10 cents a serving, and it's full spectrum nutrition, immune boosting, and delicious? Whoa, we're going to turn the world upside down and shake it from the standpoint of the magic, the bounty, the nutrition, the gourmet of plant-based food.
Brother Jamie, can I just say it?
Of course. I just say it? Yeah.
We are going to put it as actually right side up.
You're right. You're right.
Humbly.
You're right.
We are saying this humbly, really, truly humbly. but it's right side up, because the way it is now, with doing these atrocities we do to the animals and treating them like that, that is upside down. That's not going to ever benefit humanity, because it will come right to us, and we'll keep on having the wars, and we keep on having the killings and homicides and all this stuff, because this is what we are doing to others. So whether it's a Christian principle or not, it is just a life thing. We do good, we receive good. We don't, we receive the same. We receive that, I mean. So um, just just wanted to comment that.
Beautiful. Thank you, Sister Ivy. Now, I'm going to make let's make this the most complete answer to this question ever given. What are the goals and objectives? Another goal and objective is to liberate humanity from what we call the all-day monopoly game of individual hoarding for individual survival. Today, in the Hunger Games world that we live in, if you want to survive, you need to make money. And if you don't have a way of making money, let's say you live in some desertifying, economically devastated part of the world, like parts of Syria or Somalia or whatever, and you can't make money, no food for you. That's the world we live in right now. Welcome to the Hunger Games. Okay? And in this world, people are very correctly terrified and traumatized that, holy crap, I'd better make money and save money. And we have the birth of the modern sociopath. People who are obsessed with money, because guess what? There's a penalty for losing the all-day monopoly game, which is you get to die of starvation, a very painful, humiliating death on the side of the highway. That is what traps us in the all-day monopoly game of individual hoarding, first for individual survival, and then for individual aggrandizement via the ego. And with that, I'm going to pass the talking feather to Ray, who's got his hand up. Go for it, Ray.
I was being a bit cheeky about the communism comment. It is a socialized program in the sense it's our community is creating a baseline of equality amongst everybody, regardless of their income or ability to work and status and place in the class system, etc. So, but it occurs to me now that you got to project where this is going to go once it's successful. Is this something that we want to go, see, government, you weren't able to feed the people, but we've managed to figure out a way to feed the people. Do you want in? Do you want to take over from here? Where we get this ideology, political ideology can have a bit of a clash there. Is this a privatized service, or is this something that the government provides for us? Because it's not communist if the government's not doing it. If it's totally privatized, that's safe for those, that 50% of the United States that's Republican and wants small government. The government feeding everybody, taking care of everybody. Oh my God, welfare is an issue. Feeding people when they aren't ready to work. How do we know they're going to be ready to work? We're talking about basic income. There might be a pilot in our smallest province, Prince Edward Island. So we'll see how that works. We had at our conference, the Vegan World 2026 conference, we had some people that were part of a pilot program of basic income. So that's not feeding everybody, but giving everybody enough money to eat is kind of the same thing. And that was a government program, and it was working spectacularly. And then a conservative government came in and said, well, we got to get rid of that, obviously, because our team doesn't like that sort of thing, no matter how successful it is. So I had always assumed, and again, I mentioned I was a Canadian, I'd always assumed that as soon as this takes off, the government goes, yes, okay, we understand, we can see it working, and we'll take over. Do we have any visions of that sort, or will the billionaires fill in the gap?
No, really good comments there, Ray, and question. And it also gets to a question in the chat that says, hey, I'm just not getting it. It doesn't seem practical, right? And in terms of the practicality, okay, let's say that there was just a magical funding source that just said, do this for Los Angeles, right? And a bunch of people then took that funding and just did it for Los Angeles. Okay, just theoretically, hypothetically. Once it's done for Los Angeles, can you imagine the impacts on the society in Los Angeles of feeding everyone nutritious, full spectrum nutrition, gourmet, delicious plant-based stew? You know, I read an article a few weeks ago, I included it in my emailing like 3 weeks ago or so, that the murder rate in Los Angeles had doubled from where it was a year ago. And that's directly correlated to food insecurity. That's right. When people get hungry, they get desperate. And when people get desperate to eat, some of them, not all of them, but some of them will resort to violence. It's just how this works. So can you imagine, once we feed everyone in Los Angeles, what's going to happen to the crime rate? It's going to plummet. What's going to happen to the COVID rate? It's going to plummet, right? I would even go so far as to say, what's going to happen to the houseless rate? Because the houseless community is well nourished. We're not just talking, oh yeah, there's some food bank that's giving away spam, you know, crappy food that's harmful to the human body. Once people are well nourished, they'll be in much better shape to go out there and look for work or start some entrepreneurial activity or whatever. Okay. My point is this: the social. And Sister Ivy's going to comment on that. Go ahead, Sister Ivy.
No, do you want to finish your point or?
Sure. My point is this. And it gets right to the heart of practicality. Let's call it the Los Angeles hypothesis. If we can do it for Los Angeles, all of these social and economic and public health and public safety indicators are going to go from abysmal to up. The whole society of Los Angeles is going to be better across all these dimensions. Now, imagine you're the mayor of Chicago, sitting in some building there off by that famous river in downtown Chicago with a view of the lake. And suddenly you're getting all these reports of what's happening in Los Angeles. The crime rate's down, the houseless rate's down, COVID down. All these bad things are down and all these positive things are up. They're going to say, wait a second, if they could do that in Los Angeles, why don't we do this in Chicago? Hey, Chicago billionaires, of which there are plenty, kick in some and let's support making this happen in Chicago as well. And then New York and New Orleans and Philadelphia and in London and Cairo and Mexico City and guess what? Individual communities all around the world, okay, are going to adopt it. So that gets to the practicality of it, right? And I love all the questions that are coming in through the chat, but I'd love to address the next one, but I'm going to pass the talking feather to Sister Ivy. Take it away.
First, I would like to have a comment on this about the houseless. I just mentioned, I have only worked over 10 years with helping and serving this houseless population or the invisibles as we know is what they are. And I never saw until this this year and the end of last year, such an increase in houseless people ever in all that over that decade. And it's going, skyrocketing, and it's going to be a lot more when people start evicting after all this thing about the virus thing. So it's just something that, some people don't know, and I just pass that. And the other thing is, I would like to hear from the person because, okay, meaning I think the only way that we might address really well that question about the practicality is if maybe that person can tell us why is it that she or he, I'm not sure who said that, think is not practical, because then we can really address that. That's all. That's my 2 cents.
All right. Forrest has his hand up. That's go ahead, Forrest. Hey, Forrest, we actually cannot hear you. I know that we're getting some sounds coming, but something is very wrong either with the microphone or the connection.
Actually, there are noises, but no voice.
I'm driving. Can you hear me a little bit better? Hello?
Yeah, we can barely hear what you're saying. So you may want to either type into the chat or get the microphone fixed. But
I do. So I'm leaving Los Angeles. I was there yesterday, and I understand some of the situations, and I don't see that as a good example. I would question the legitimacy of that article and study. Because there's so many other.
Excuse me, I don't know if other people can understand, but
no. Forrest, we know you're trying to speak loud and clear, but we simply cannot hear what you're saying.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
go ahead and type into the chat, Forrest, if you don't mind. And
I think I heard him say that he challenges the legitimacy of that article. Was there an article that we talked about? No.
How is that? Is that better?
Way better, Forrest. Way better. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, it's the Bluetooth. So Los Angeles is a good example. I left there yesterday, and I'm currently now in Arkansas. I can stop and. So I don't see that as some cohesive, solution that's going to kick off these dominoes. There's so many other complex factors that are involved. And I don't think that it's food insecurity, especially in Los Angeles. For instance, a lot of the things that you're referring to, USDA already does a lot of this stuff. And they give out tons of food throughout California. They have the SNAP programs throughout the country where people are just able to go and buy whatever it is that they want at any Walmart or store. Access to food itself is quite plentiful. And somebody that spent so many years overseas in foreign countries to come back and see how plentiful it's become in the United States, I don't see that as some solution. It's a good idea. It's something to strive for. Of course, there's labor associated with it. And in today's society, that's where we value things in productivity, which would be either labor or produce. Now, being that I just sold my farm in Southern California because of the nonsensical government that is there, that shut me down and put me out of business basically last year when COVID hit, when I had tons of food that I had to throw away because I couldn't get rid of it, right? I don't see any of those as the one-off solution that is going to start a chain of dominoes. Now, earlier today, I mentioned about leading by example. I personally would think that would be the most practical way to really achieve the goals of what this group would like to achieve. As with anything in life, it's about leading by example. And it's all of this decentralization, the self-sufficiency, and everything is to say in some area, you take some area and you show proof of performance. Because the systems are so complex and people's minds and thoughts are so diverse that I, I just don't see it, and I'm still questioning it. And I support what you do. It's good to see some of the other faces that I remember from the past as well in the chat. And maybe you guys would be able to change my mind, but I'm just thinking about real practical solutions. And this solution I don't see at all as practical, especially given the amount of availability and access, for instance, in the United States.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing all this. That's really, thank you. I think the main points that maybe I will call to your attention is that this is a plant-based diet. This is all by people that follow vegan way. And this is not what is out there. I know plenty of the food that is out there. And, it's nothing like what we are going to offer. So I'm just sharing with you that this is one of the main differences is what we are offering. This is
I
not
understand.
for
And
the houses of anybody. And the second thing, that I will bring is that, of course, you're very right about there's so many things that are wrong in society and so many things that need to change that, this is not going to change all of those, of course. And I haven't heard that we claim anything like that, but it is going to make a difference, and it is going to start with one change, and then will come another one, and then another one. So I think this is the best I can locally offer to you. I hope
I'm
it helps.
sorry, but I can agree. And I also disagree with the fact that that's assuming that the way of the vegan is the way of the world, right? And that in itself just sparks so much controversy as well as debate. Like for instance, the best example is when Alan Savory, this group was lucky enough to get him to speak, and I can't think of anyone that has done more for agriculture as a whole on the planet than this guy. And some lady, a vegan lady, just really just gave him a hard time without understanding what it was that his mission is, because it's this concept of forcing something onto someone else. And even if you try to encourage, is the best word, to say that this is the better way, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to take place, because everyone has their own concepts and how they view the world, the environment, etc. Yeah, I still don't see it. Of course, I understand what you're saying, but I also heard you refer to things regarding abuse to the animals, and something in regards to that. And that in itself is going to be a problem. For instance, the debate would be, well, okay, well, let's say we stop, slaughtering animals. Now we have all these animals, but what do you do with them? Well, if you let them run free, then in turn, they destroy their environment, right? Through overpopulation, which is by many respects what many say is the problems that we're encountering right now is the overpopulation of human species, right? So that's my counterpoint. And I just disagree. I'm sorry.
That's fine. That's fine. That's fine that you disagree. I mean, that's good. We're just here to share, and whoever agrees and disagrees, that's a very personal thing, as well as it's a very personal thing. If you want to move into a plant-based way, or if it's just all, of course, it's just personal ways and personal decisions, and we're fine. That's good. I'm sure everybody's fine. You disagree, that's fine. Everybody's free here, and that's what we want, to keep free. So great. I just hope that it works for you and that is good, and that's it. So yeah, we're not really here to discuss about if you want to go the vegan way or anything like that, because we can't take the time for that. But as I said, thank you so much for sharing, your view, and great. This all good. Yeah, we probably are not all going to agree, and even less about everything. So we are good. We're good with that. Thank you for sharing, and for being here. And I'm sure we're gonna move on to what is it, Brother James?
Yeah, well, first of all, I just want to acknowledge this and thank Forrest for being here and for speaking up, because I see this as a good opportunity for us to get familiar with objections that might come our way or challenges. So I see this as a good opportunity. I see Marco has his hand up, but I just wanted to make a quick comment since this was addressed in the chat. About overpopulation of animals. The reason we have so many animals is because the animal agriculture industry does forced breeding. In human societies, we would call that rape, right? So you have all these animals that are force raped and impregnated against their will. And so it's the humans who are creating the overpopulation of animals. But there are other alternatives than just letting the animals run wild in the streets, so to speak, or around the countryside. There are numerous examples of very compassionate ways of giving these animals good lives so they could live out their lives in peace without being raped or murdered, et cetera, et cetera. But we simply stop the breeding and let the animal population just naturally decline is the most humane solution I can think of. And again, there's lots of examples of this, but I just wanted to make that point. Marco has his hand up, followed by Forrest. Go for it, Marco.
May I just say about your point?
Yeah.
That is a great point. Thank you so much. There are many animal sanctuaries right now here in California. I'll say here in Southern California. I have heard of many in Northern California, but I have been myself there. Absolutely wonderful. And if anybody go and see an animal in animal sanctuary, I just share this because this is the solution that we already have. It's been already decades of this, but people don't know. And I don't mean anyone in particular, just a lot of people don't know about this. Animal sanctuaries, they just let the people live, let the animals live as the people have the right to live also here without, thinking someone is going to, of course, we have those areas that hopefully we'll be able to help on, but that without having to think every minute someone is going to come and rape you or kill you. That's the same way those animals live in there. It is another world. I cannot even explain it well. But if anyone comes around, have the chance to, or have the chance to an animal sanctuary, you will see a different world. And that is what this brother wrote about. This solution is already here and it's beautiful. Please, if you have a chance to do that, it would change completely your thinking about, because you yourself will feel so different in that world. Is crazy. So just sharing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Ivy. Marco followed by Forrest. Go for it, Marco.
Yeah, I just want to touch just a little bit. It seemed like, you know, in the chat there was earlier today and again now. I think earlier today it was, you know, talking doesn't get things done. Doers get things done. Also, leading by example. I mean, that's exactly what we're doing here, is leading by example. And I, you know, I've personally been in the food pantries of churches and nonprofits and government agencies, and they're you know, they're giving away lots of volume of food, but it's essentially poison. You know, there's just an enormous bounty in the food distributions. You know, the I guess we could call them charities, food distributions, but it's sugar laden, salt laden, chemical laden. It's all the wrong types of food, you know, unhealthy foods. So, you know, and our leading by example is to give a fully healthy, nutritional, immune boosting food, and not just giving it away, but you know, it won't be just for the poorest people. It will be for anybody that wants to eat it, and the people that have more income would gladly have their burden of you know, providing healthy meals lightened, even if it's on a part-time basis, maybe only a couple meals a week. You know, and those are the types of people that would donate and support the program. And the people that are the poorest people that are the beneficiary of the program would now have full bellies, nutrition for their brains to work better, and they'll want to, you know, carry on the work and support it. It'll be very viral. And we are here leading by example. And that's all I have right now. Thank you.
All right. Good stuff. Good stuff. We got some good comments in the chat. And next up is Forrest, followed by Ray. Go for it, Forrest.
Okay.
Oh, Forrest, we can't hear you again. So maybe it's the Bluetooth.
How about now?
Better. Yeah. Why don't you give it a try?
No, those are really great comments. And so what I mentioned earlier is, take an example of where you find an area. Now, LA's, you know, it's a big area. I don't know if that would be a great place as a test bed. So, as I explained earlier, right, I just sold my farm, right? Not an animal farm, but a vegetable farm. Okay. So I understand the industry, I understand the experience, I understand working with the USDA, I understand what's available out there. And yeah, I mean, there was a lot of comments to really take in. So I understand the compassion of the sanctuaries. Um, and in that, there's so many rebuttal points. So, when it comes to this, right? And there's also so much evidence to show where, you know, if you do let animals off into one little area, that's they're sanctuary area, depending on what kind of animal you bring into the environment. Depends on what detriment it actually has on the environment, right? Kangaroos are a great example. Now the Australians just run around and shoot those things because it's just so
Forrest, you're breaking up again real bad.
Okay. Well, I guess the best I can say is, yeah, I hope it works. Good luck, and you guys have my support. I understand all the points. My main points are always about pick an area. LA is entirely too large, and then you've got to infiltrate an area. You have the government, you have the community. All areas are complex. They're complex systems, right? And I think we have better success because you can show by example and bring more people onto the cause. Other than that, good luck. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Thank you, Forrest. Thank you. I just want to make a comment to the group before I pass it to Ray. First of all, welcome Tony. Welcome Samit. Welcome everyone. We are recording. We're having a conversation about food healers. And look at how, the conversation is evolving. There were some, very interesting challenges, counterpoints, etc. And I think we're handling them very, very well. And look at the evolution. I think it's super awesome. All right, with that, I pass it to Ray. And no one else is in the queue at the moment, so it's a good time to get in the queue. Go for it, Ray.
I've got a question for Forrest. It kind of refers back to earlier when you was talking about how the food program wasn't going to accomplish the goals. So I don't know what goals we've established. So it may help to clarify what you think the goals should be and how to accomplish them. I mentioned before that there was some universal basic income people that came to our program. They weren't vegan, and they had a stance that food was not the right choice because we have a society that demands choice. So to have a homogenized stew could be an issue because people feel the privilege of being able to choose what kind of food that they have. So that's a bit of a problem as we head to, if you really believe that we're heading towards a future of crises and a need for resilience of communities to be able to continue to feed and deal with food security issues. So food security is probably close to what you're talking about, right? Especially as a farmer yourself. But I just want to wonder what the issue was with food, that it wasn't where you start, because I have heard different points of view on that. Forrest, you still there? One of the things that's come up for me since observing the COVID pandemic is people not going to restaurants, and how much that hurts us as a society not to be able to eat out. But if you think about it, what more privilege is there to go to a restaurant, have somebody serve you food, and have a menu of 100 things that you could choose from? And yet there's organizations like Project Drawdown that say one of our biggest problems is food waste. And there's nowhere place where you waste food more than in restaurants, where they have 100 recipes ready to go. And if people don't order them, that food gets thrown out. So in the Anthropocene or anthropocentrism, it has a lot to do with our consumption patterns. And even that those people that are living in poverty in our developed nations, they are bombarded constantly with the idea that they should be eating burgers, they should be eating steak, they should be, these are the things that prove that you're living life right. Whereas that's a completely wrong message. And it's usually the USDA that's helping to promote those kinds of ideas, where instead of trying to promote health. And we just had the dietary guidelines I think they got a bit better in this revision, but nowhere near as good as where I am in Canada, where the food guidelines said, we don't need dairy. It doesn't need its own food group, and we should try to eat as little saturated fat as possible, without actually calling out any particular food group where that saturated fat comes from. But sometimes you got to just read between the lines. Forrest is gone.
No, Forrest is still here. Go ahead.
I'm here. I'm listening. I think those are really incredible points. I really enjoy that. Schools would be a great place to start, and a campaign to actually get the foods that you're referring to in schools would be one hell of an incredible place to start. I mean, there was a lot of points. What was some of the questions exactly? I can't remember everything, but you brought up a lot of great points there.
Earlier, you were talking about food not being able to accomplish the objective. I just want to know what the objective is.
Oh, right. So the objective. So earlier on, when I joined into this group, it was about, well, how do we come together as the species and do our part to save the planet as a whole, and as well as in doing that, it's going to require that we have our own self-sovereignty and our own life. So food is just one part of a whole bigger picture in sustainability, just the whole picture itself, right? So, for instance, I sold my farm totally on solar. I grew everything that I needed, fruits, vegetables, the aquaponics, the whole thing, the whole kit and caboodle, right? So, I'm saying that, well, I'm doing my part, right? I'm reducing energy, reducing waste, this whole thing to help Mother Earth. And I think that was one of the branches on Jamin's spreadsheet. What do we do to help Mother Earth? The food part is actually quite simple and quite easy. And it just comes down to, okay, well, how many fruit trees have you planted in these areas, wherever you're at, wherever you live, right? Just put it there. Just watch it. It'll grow. Nature is really fabulous, and it does what nature does. But that itself doesn't solve the whole picture of the being, the life, right? And living in balance with these changes that should be made as a species in like communion and synergistically with the planet, the environment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So at least that's my point of view. And I thought ultimately that was the goal of what the group was trying to achieve. Whereas food is only just one aspect of it, with my way of thinking, is what it is that we're trying to achieve.
Well, thank you, Forrest. I think those are great answers. You mentioned you were a farmer. Do you find that the system didn't take care of you? Is that why you had to get rid of your farm? This is just a time of.
No, that wasn't it. The state of California shut the schools down, and my kids grew up most of their life in Japan, and they suffered greatly. They got what I would call a brain disease and addiction, sitting on devices all day. They didn't have friends. They were depressed. They were mentally ill. I had to send them out of the country, sell the farm, and move on. That's what the problem was. It was government. I actually had quite a good life. And if government didn't step on my life and ruin my kids' minds, then I would still be there doing what I do and enjoy it.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. My parents had ranch. And yeah, I'm sorry about that. But I'm sure you will have a lot of goodness anyway. So that's my comfort, just thinking about something like that is now you're gonna have lots of good anyway, coming other ways or whatever ways. And of course, this is what we all wish for you, I'm sure. And so, well, life is good anyway. But I just want to say sorry about that.
Yeah, sorry to hear about that, Forrest. And you're freaking me out because there's so many people that I know have, this chronic addiction lifestyle that there's just things that we get fixated on, and that seems to be there's lots of ways to get in and not awful lot of ways to get out of those problems, and that's something that I think we face as a culture. And it does tie back into that entitlement I was talking about in the restaurant. The choice of what we do with our times. Do we can entertain ourselves to death? And I'm actually I'm a video editor by trade. I'm part of that entertainment industry, and I see how big that industry is. And there was an ancient Roman that referred to the government's can do whatever they want as long as they entertain us with bread and circuses. So bread, there's the food aspect of it, and the circuses is the keep everybody entertained. But entertainment doesn't always make us happy.
Thank you for saying all that. I would say entertainment will never make anybody happy. It will distract them from what he or she can do to actually acquire some happiness. But yeah, that it can never offer that. Thank you so much for bringing that.
And it's such a complicated balance because at the same time, I see this need for everybody to get jobs, and I'm wondering as we get to what we call a population crisis. Is it a population crisis because everybody can't get jobs? Do we have enough people now that we're actually past the point of saturation where maybe everybody doesn't need to work 40-hour-a-week jobs, but at the same time we have this tendency to fall into senses of personal value that sometimes, like, if we don't have a job, we lose our purpose, we lose our focus, and we have soaring depression because people don't have an identity. And we're coming out of this industrial age where everybody's identity was what they did for a living. It was so clear cut, it was so obvious, right up to the 50s and 60s, and then it started to get a little bit more confusing. And there's no surprise that the depression rates are as high as they are. But I think that there could be a way to work through this and try to find ways that we don't have to work as hard. Half the people who have jobs are stressed to death. There's a massive suicide in the most industrialized countries like Japan. And yet you can see that there's sometimes the most happiness to be found in those places that are living a lot more according to the way that our ancestors did a long time before all these before an entertainment industry.
That is, I think that's all well said. And one of the main things that have been taken away without or with very few people realizing, and this is all history stuff, not me saying it, is about the community. Community, there was so much joy in community. There was a strength in community. And by the time they did all these grids and took out all the places of community gathering, then a lot of changes came. And if we talk about depression, suicide, yes, of course, Japan is just the first one there. And you don't see that. Over here, even in the United States, it's hard to see unless you go to very small villages, then you see those community gathering places. So it becomes like a robot thing. And, robots, as far as we can know, don't have that much joy or, time together or things like that. So it's all of the changes in our life that uh, a lot of people didn't even realize it was all manipulated. So yes, thank you for bringing that up too.
It's so hard to tell how much of it's in our heads too. Is this something that we just need to reprogram? We've seen this like industrialization of society, and the robots have been building our cars and building so much of our manufactured goods that is there a promise there that they will be able to do all the hard work and that free the human race to a more fulfilled lifestyle? This obviously isn't happening because we still have that industrial age mentality where everybody's got to get a job, and if you don't have a job, you're worthless. You obviously are doing life wrong, and that can't be the truth. That can't be this little slice of history where we've even the industrial age was a tiny slice of the grand scheme of things, and I'm sure the entire history of our existence hasn't been work and work and work and work and then retire and maybe go on a cruise.
Yes, I believe it's all the mentality that needs to be changed and all the programming. But I do believe that it is up to us if we can awaken to it and see some light into how we can make those changes, then who can stop us really? I mean, really, it's just we don't know how strong we are. If we get united and if we, work for the good, of course. But I see a lot of hope in everything that is wrong. And there's so many things that I see wrong. And this is from, not only decades, but centuries. And, so many wrong things that none of us chose. I mean, if you see a lot of the things that we each one can see are wrong in society, did I have any say in it, any choice on it? Nothing. It was things, they were things that were chosen so long ago, we weren't even here. But we do have the choice of changing those things. And this group can do it. And this group is about bringing those choices and those changes that would change our lives. Because it doesn't matter how the me is doing or how great the me is doing. No one is going to be happy because you will see every minute the other ones that are lacking, that are starving, that are, like we see it everywhere on the street or on TV, whichever, but it's going to be in front of our faces because that selfishness that we've been programmed with, it will never work for anything good or happy or anything close to that.
Yeah, here's hoping we have the tools to be able to solve these problems. And there hasn't been any time in the history of the human race where we've been able to get together in places like this Zoom chat and have that conversation of conversations, just be able to communicate across borders, across the countries and continents, and plan a way through it. And it's obviously a very important thing that's going across countries because previously all decisions kind of happened within a country, and it was usually to attack another country or try to undermine the power of another country. And this is just yet another one of those leftover vestigial things from that industrial age. We're not in that age anymore. We're in the information age. We're living it, but we still have so many rules that are anchored in that past. And we have the COP summits and all the countries get together and try to form strategies on climate change. They can't do it because they're designed to grow their economy as compared to everybody else that's at the summit. So it's a big dust kicking event where everybody goes, you first, you first. Let's see you compromise your economy first, right? So there's no mystery why they don't come back with anything tangible. But no, it's a time when we can communicate directly with each other. We can communicate and have this big tarball of conversations that kind of move the needle in one direction or another. So we can move the needle towards what needs to get done. And when we do, then the politicians all of a sudden find their decisions will be easy to make, because everybody believes it. That groundswell of support is the only thing that ever fixes politics. Even the saying is that change doesn't come from Washington. Change comes to Washington. Washington doesn't know what to do until everybody knows what to do. And then they say, you want me to do this? I'm your voted elected representative. Yeah, okay, let's do it.
Absolutely. If we keep on, but sometimes it's like really so simple. Yes, if we keep on with the old things and old rules, we can only get the results of that those things can bring. So that's why um, I said that is all about the mentality. We need to change our thinking. And there's a very good quote I shared in one time a while ago. It's one of my absolute favorite quotes, and is I'm very grateful to it because it's been leading. Is one of the main quotes that has been leading our organization, and it has shown that it works. It says, you never change, of course you have heard this, you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes this existing model obsolete. This is what this group is about. And we're gonna have a lot of, every new idea we know goes into a lot of troubles, a lot of things, until we just have to carry it on so that people see, hey, actually this works, and then stop fighting it. And this is the same thing, And this is a quote from a very famous architect that did really, really well. So when I see success, I'm like, okay, I can grab some ideas because it proved that it works, but that it works for a big group of people, not just from little percentage. So this is what this group is about. That's why I'm here too, because this is the same uh, changing an existing model that is not working, that is obsolete, that needs to go. And it doesn't matter how many people don't want it to go. We are by the billions and billions. And if we can just agree on something that is good for life and a change that we need to do, it's very powerful. And of course, this is not written in too many places because, if we find out that, the game is over for other people that have different interests others than the good, actual goodwill of the people and that actually care about people.
So who has the solutions?
We have the solutions.
Forrest said
Miranda has this. Go ahead.
Forrest said that veganism isn't the solution. Maybe meaning like an entirely vegan world. But your old boss, Jamin, Bill Gates, said that everybody should eat artificial meat. Everybody in the developed nation should eat artificial meat. Artificial meat just sounds the worst. it's made out of food, so you shouldn't call it artificial. But point taken, we know what he's talking about. If you have to eat a burger, eat a plant-based burger, or even a vat-grown burger, beef off the hoof, cows that never had feet, and of course a cow that's never had an asshole never becomes a manure problem, right?
I just bring again that we are saying this is one of the solutions to many, many problems that we need to tackle. Is that, am I saying it right, Brother Jamie?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think that's very, very important that people understand. We are not saying, I know Paul McCartney, for example, and all the good that he has done, God bless him. But he did talk like, if everyone turns vegan, then the world, something like that, of course that's not a quote, but I mean, he did talk in that way. We are completely far away from talking this way. We recognize that there are so many problems that, not one thing is going to bring the solution to all the troubles that we are in. Absolutely not. So I think that's a very important thing that we might need to say many times, but that is very important that people understand. We are just saying this is one thing that we are really into, that we believe in, that we have practiced and is proven in our lives that is a great thing. And here we are. We are ready to help on this and put our time and our efforts on this. So please, that's all we are saying. We're ready here and willing to do it. I've been doing it for over a decade, but way longer than that. I have gone the vegan way, and that's what we're saying. We're not saying we're gonna fix every problem in the world just by bringing plant-based foods, nothing like that. That honestly is nonsense. We need a lot more of that. I wish it was just that. That would be so easy. But we are very conscious that that's not the way it is. So please try to understand we are not saying anything like that. But thank you for bringing all the ideas. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. We really appreciate your time and sharing.
Beautiful, Sister Ivy. And actually, I want to make a comment is look at how we collectively have taken this discussion with some challenges and objections and disagreements and all that, and look at how compassionately we've handled it. And the fact that this group is majority vegan and pre-vegan, I think is not a coincidence. The point was made earlier today and yesterday that we don't really know any vegan bullies, right? And so look at how veganism and compassion and patience and peace, both inner peace and outer peace, go hand in hand, right? I could imagine in other groups with a heavy American audience, seems like we have more non-Americans here than Americans, which is another non-coincidence, right? Really. If this were just like an all-American meat-eating discussion group, I could just see it turn into a shouting match, right? So I want to commend everyone here for such a peaceful, compassionate, patient, thoughtful conversation. Thank you all. Passing the talking feather.
Oh, the reason why I brought up Bill Gates was because, of course, he's now in the spotlight because he's buying up all the farmland that he could get his hands on. He's the biggest landowner in the world now, and everybody's like, oh, what does that mean? And we know that he's heavily linked with the GMO foods. So is he going to force GMO foods on all the land that he owns just to make it a decision by him rather than by society as a general, or any sort of market driven decision? But honestly, the very first thing that popped into my head was that one of the problems that was encountered when E.O. Wilson came up with the half Earth solution: give half the Earth back to the animals, give it back to nature, and humanity has to deal with life and the rest of it, because humanity will not survive if we don't restore our biodiversity. He was a biologist, and he studied ants in particular, but he wrote this book, Half Earth Solution, and has a Half Earth Foundation that I guess controls money to try to accomplish these goals. Sadly, they don't really address agriculture as much as they ought to, especially since they know that that's a big obstacle to a lot of their visions. And the obstacle is that land in the United States is owned generally from top to bottom, east to west. It's generally owned by somebody, or owned by the national park systems and so forth. So I've got a graphic, if I could share. This was the first thing that popped in my mind, because if land ownership is the issue, what if Bill Gates buys enough land to actually rewild migratory corridors? How cool would that be? Because that's the only way that you can solve a land ownership issue. As long as everybody's committed to this idea of land ownership, how do you create
that would be great, and he buying land, not for what you're saying. So
I really doubt it's for what
he's
referring to. But the first thing that popped in my head was if somebody bought up all the land, then they would be able to rewild it and have migratory corridors. Because apparently it won't work if you just have little spots here and there. Some bird species or butterflies might be able to make do with that, but obviously any land-born animal needs to migrate, and they need to contiguous land in order to do that. So they can't guarantee that they'll be able to get across hundreds of miles of farmland to get to the next rewilded area. But I'm just wondering if it's on his radar that's the sort of thing that could possibly be fixed. I'll put a link to that image in the chat. And there's other conversations of different wildlife corridors. One's not discussed here, that goes from California to Atlanta. So it goes across the United States, across Texas, and it'd be a band about maybe it was 2 miles across. That would be, land that is where humanity is a guest rather than automatically owning it. And what would it mean to have these huge swaths of land that are owned by nature, and that we are guests when we're there? One thing is, how humbling is that? It's, finally some way of saying that the earth isn't just a big ball for humanity to play with. To be able to have the humility to say that we're guests in this particular area. And what implications would it mean for cities that exist within those shaded areas? In the town where I grew up, if anybody's looking at the image, I'm in the middle of the Owen boreal forest. So it's like as far as away from anything that's if that's this watch that's now owned by land, and of course that's a mining town. What does that mean? A mining town in the middle of land owned by the animals?
What's the name of that town, Ray?
The town is Leaf Rapids, Manitoba. It's about the same parallel as those tar sands in Alberta.
Which O, Ray? The O in boreal or the O in forest?
Forest. I was in a Zoom conference with somebody else, another environmentalist I know in Toronto. She introduced me to somebody on a Zoom call. So I assume they were in Toronto too. It turns out they were in Churchill, Manitoba, which is even further north than where I was, literally the edge of polar bear country. No roads go there. That's the reason why I'd never been there.
Well, I have a comment about a topic that was brought up earlier, which is, with all the automation and everything and technology, what percentage of either people would need to be working, or what percentage of the 40-hour work week would really need to be worked in order to meet all of our needs. And I mean, if you think about our living standards, say 100 years ago, we could probably get away with about 1/10 the economic output to meet all of those needs. Just think about, I mean, we didn't have the vast majority of products or services that exist today. But the thing is, it's the goal of capitalism is not the provisioning of human needs, right? The fulfillment of human needs. It's the accumulation of wealth, money, land, livestock, whatever that can be accumulated. And what we're doing with food healers is actually the provisioning of basic needs, starting with food, for free as basic public goods. Now you can imagine a world where all basic human needs are provided, are offered at least for free as basic public goods. It doesn't mean everyone would necessarily want to partake. If you've got your own house and you're happy there, you don't need to go live in some public housing, for example, right? But at least it would all be offered and provided for. And can you imagine how that would radically change the game of life on Earth? And I'm not saying that would suddenly get rid of hoarding and all that, but it would certainly eliminate the life and death need to hoard, right? Right now, hoarding is a matter of life and death, at least in the United States, not in Canada and not in continental Europe, for the most part, where basic human needs are basically provided for. And as a result, life in continental Europe and Canada is way more peaceful, happy, and healthy than in the United States, which has really become a mess. Anyway, just wanted to throw that in the hopper.
We've managed to culturally replicate a lot of those problems.
And you wrote this is a very huge problem. I mean, the hoarding, this is terrible. I mean, you can see all the storage, which made another industry, the storage industry. And again, people paying from their hard work to go on a storage thing that they probably are not going to use in 2 years, sometimes 5 years. I know friends with 6 years paying that and they never gone back to see what's there, all that stuff. And it is a problem with the house community and with the on-house community. The houseless, they are about, so much of the trouble is about hoarding because they don't have any space, but still keep things. So I'm saying this is both size house and on-house communities. But the wonderful thing is that we have the amazing minimalistic movement. And so it is so great that for every all these obsolete things that we need to get out of the way, everything is sprouting, everything. If we really look into it and know, a lot of people don't know also, like with the animal sanctuaries, like so many things about the animalist, and no, I'm sorry, minimalistic movement, but it's doing great things. And a lot of the, most of the, I just shared this, most of the volunteers, probably 90% of the volunteers of Rio Uno, they are from the last 2 generations. I don't choose them. I just work with whoever comes and wants to help. But it's that way. And I mention this because among them, there's so many that have chosen, I don't want to do what my family's done forever. And these people are amazingly doing this change right now. And this is all over. Of course, if you go to YouTube, you can see people that are living in RVs, campers, in vans. They don't want these big, huge things. They are, of course, out of paying half of your salary just for the rent and all this stuff. I mean, it's just a wonderful thing. We just have to be there or do it, you know? And but it's so great, and I'm sharing this because that is a huge problem we have, and it's not only in the United States. It would be nice, but it's all over. All the materiality and materialism brought us to, hoarding. So again, a change in mentality. Once that we change and say, oh, you know what, these things are not going to really make us happy, and we're not going to take them anyway when we leave. So what for to spend our lives doing that? And I do hope I don't offend anybody. It's just that I been awakened to this, and it's been such a wonderful blessing. And so I'm sharing the blessing. That's all. But I was there, and had the house and all this stuff. And if we can awaken to these things way earlier, like these new generations are so much more than the older generations, then there's the change right there. The obsolete goes out, but we have to make a new model. And this minimalist movement is the new model, and is working, and is liberating people everywhere. And of course, I know also people from the older generations that are doing this and having the life. So just sharing the good, we do need this, because as we know, the news always share only the opposite. So very wonderful hopes. And this group, again, the same, right on the head.
Beautiful. Thank you, Sister Ivy. Beautiful, beautiful. All right, James has his hand up. Go for it, James.
Oh, hey, thanks. Do you guys, where you live, do you have a place called Dutch Brothers Coffee? Does anybody have that? I think it's
I'm familiar with that in Oregon. Just I'm up in the state of Washington, and but I'm familiar with it in Oregon. You said in Arizona they have it?
Yeah. So one thing that I noticed is they started out really small, and what they did is they rented a small space in parking lots of grocery stores, and then they basically had like a little, very small little manufactured kind of hut or home. And then now they're quite large, but by renting a little space in the parking lot, people could pull up and grab a cup of coffee, and they kept their cost really low. And I guess what I was visualizing for this food, or for the stew, is maybe with enough donations, there could be some of these, something similar in a parking lot of a grocery store, that a space of the grocery store is rented in the parking lot, and people can drive up, or they can walk up and grab this stew. And then they see it's sort of a structure, and then it becomes like almost really popular. See, like this Dutch Brothers coffee, it's become very popular here in Arizona now. And it's almost like you see all the younger generation, everyone just driving up and getting the coffee there. It's just as popular as Starbucks. Anyway, it was just one of my visions of in the beginning of way of to get the food. And then people at lunchtime or on the way to work, they can grab this stew really easily. I don't know, that was kind of a vision. And someone earlier was talking about the farm, and I forgot its name, but and my internet dropped. But I feel bad for him losing his farm also. But he had mentioned fruit trees, and I think that's really important that we continue to plant fruit trees as much as we can. And anywhere that there's landscaping, there could be fruit trees, especially in Southern California. It's all types of fruit trees we can grow there. And that combined with the stew could be just extra food supplement and nutrition as well. And the last thing I wanted to say is anybody familiar with the Zeitgeist Movement? I've watched, some of the videos, the Zeitgeist Addendum and things on YouTube. And there is some interesting philosophies and ideas. And listening to you guys in the group, there is some good ideas that are similar. And the idea is that it's a resource-based economy instead of the economy that we have right now, just hoarding and getting as much wealth as we can. That's all I've got to say for now.
Have you seen the Interreflections? Peter Joseph's latest one? He's done all the Zeitgeist movies.
Oh, no, not yet.
Recently called Interreflections. It's sort of fictional, but it's kind of set in the future, looking back to figure out how we figured everything out, how we managed to make it all work. And I rented it. I watched half of it, and then the rental period elapsed, and so I haven't seen the second half. But it was pretty cool. It was about 4 hours long.
I'm definitely optimistic. I'm a Trekkie. I watch Star Trek because I'm an engineer. I'm a geek. You got to watch Star Trek. And Star Trek in the future, you don't need money to buy food. Everything it's just there, and everyone has their place in society, and they do what they're specialized in.
Awesome. Well, it's interesting that you mentioned Star Trek because I have a future vision of Star Trek of when they finally discover capitalism, and then the crew members on board the ship start dismantling the ship to sell parts to Klingons or whatever. And that's essentially what we're doing here on Mother Earth. We're taking spaceship Earth and we're dismantling her to fuel capitalism. So anyway, that was a joke. Anyway, obviously what makes Star Trek work is that there is no capitalism. Everyone just does their part and receives what they need, and it all works. But really, really good points there, James. Thank you. I really, really dig your points. I like what you said about the Dutch Brothers coffee, kind of like a drive-through for the stew. Hey, if it works for coffee, it could work well for the stew. And that also gives me a thought, which is what if we went to some of these coffee places that are already set up and said, hey, how'd you like to offer free stew as an additional, yes, come and keep buying your coffee here, but when you come through to get your coffee, we'll also fill you up with free stew.
I'm in Toronto, and they've got here Penguin Pickup, and they've got kind of the same concept that they're in the parking lot of a grocery store, like set close to the street, on the opposite side of Walmart, for example. And they're pickup places that have affiliation with big box stores like Walmart and IKEA, and you can get pick up orders there. And one of the things is groceries. So why wouldn't you be able to have any other sort of food that you could pick up there? People that are part of this food subscription can pick up there any time of day. So it won't matter as much. This is one of the technical issues of delivering food to people is they've got to be there in order to pick it up rather than at their job or rather than taking care of their kids or whatever. And some people won't be able to do it. So they're sending delegates and People will be picking up for 3 people. How do you know who? Do you only serve 1 per customer? So if you have a formalized system, you can pick up food anywhere. So that's a good idea, because usually shopping malls are that natural geography that they'll try to get one in every neighborhood. You'll try to find, there'll be grocery stores and places with big box parking lots generally distributed throughout the city. So there won't be any real deep holes where there's no access for people. That's a really neat idea. Once it gets to be a formalized kind of venture.
Yeah.
James, I like that as well. This is Forrest. I didn't think of that, and I think that's the value of coming together as a group. Is we get all of these different ideas, and I actually like that one. I enjoy it, and it's me, Forrest. I didn't lose the farm. I sold the farm. I sold the farm because I was oppressed by a nonsensical government, right?
Yeah.
In today's time, in 2021, right? And that I also had mentioned about it's hardly anything to just clone a tree anywhere, especially in Southern California, right? Anywhere in the LA area, if you can find dirt, you can just jam some kind of branch into the ground, and more than likely it'll take root, especially any fruits. I think these are beneficial.
Yeah.
I've done a lot. I planted a lot. I was up in the Sierras, all throughout the area. I've given away a lot of plants and lots of food in that area. But ultimately, I still think it's just one really small fraction to a greater whole that we want to achieve. And it sounds to me like this is where, it's a great group with great ideas, and it's really one piece that's well thought out and fine tuned, but it's just a small aspect of a greater whole, especially when, for instance, you're kind of dealing with, let's say, the homeless or the food insecure or whatever the case is. That is still a small fraction of the entire population itself. And anyway, I still think it's good stuff, and I just wanted to put that point in there that I sold because of an oppressive government that ruined the lives of my children's minds.
Yeah. But that's true with some fruit trees, like a fig tree, for example. A large fig tree, you could take cuttings and start 100 fig trees per year from one tree. And you have to baby them in the beginning, but
so and fig trees grow like a weed, actually, especially in the right climate. It'll just turn into a wild bush almost. That's absolutely right.
There should be fig trees planted everywhere, and that should be the new banana. So there's no reason to ship a banana halfway across the world when you can just walk in the park and grab some figs off the tree. And maintenance people who are doing landscaping and the people who do the park, they could easily take care of the tree just as if they take care of the grass. So I don't know, I think that's really what we need.
And I agree with you. And that's why earlier today I had mentioned about, leading by example, in the sense that, we are the government, and the government is us, right? And the way to make changes and to solidify a community in that area is basically through numbers, right? Or at least that's the case in, a civilized representative or democratic government. And that's part of what I was getting at this morning is having an area, and it can't be as large as Los Angeles. And Los Angeles is so complex that we don't even know what the value of pollution does to people's minds and their decision-making process, etc. So we can do and do and do, and they're just in a toxic environment. But being in an environment or some little area where you can infiltrate that area and just lead by example. And there's a lot of people who are in the crypto space where you literally can get off of the fiat system, internalize your own economy, and these open source platforms and construction and building, all of these things I'm quite decent at doing, and I have a strong understanding. I've internshiped in building earthships, and a lot of different styles of sustainable homes. These things are very doable, and doable with minimal resources, actually. And so, I think ultimately we're talking about, well, we have to change the minds and we have to change the economy. Those are the two primary factors: the mind, the perception, and then the economy. And there's places in the world that are going against the mold and doing things a little bit differently, having a new way of managing economies. And I just think that, these kind of places are really, setting examples. And I think that's always a great place to start. But back to my original point, I do like that idea about the Dutch stew. That's really fabulous. Good idea, James.
I had a question. You guys are familiar with Food Not Bombs? Why has Food Not Bombs? Food Not Bombs has been around for a while. But why have they not gotten bigger? Have they chose to stay small, or is it just that there's just they don't advertise very much for volunteers? And I don't know.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were finished. But
Go ahead. Yeah. I was just curious about that because
who's this?
Oh, this is James.
Oh,
Yeah,
great.
and the reason that I want this to take. I mean, I think the Food Not Bombs is a really good idea. However, like, why has it not grown even bigger? And so this healthy stew idea is, I think it's marvelous, and I want it to grow just ginormous, just really huge.
Well, thank you for bringing that up. I love Food Not Bombs. I was with them for maybe less than 3 years. Absolutely wonderful, all volunteer and wonderful people. It's just great. They are, though, dedicated to only the houseless people. And they have grown a lot, everywhere. But it's for the houseless people. So the homeless, which call it houseless. For those who may not know, I share this. This is a term that we at UNO started really advertising and promoting, and it really changed a lot of the mentality of the people. And the reason was that we do believe, as believers, we believe that everyone has a home, that warm, wonderful place in your thinking, in your love, or it might be with someone or some group, whatever. And so why do we they are thinking that they're lacking that home, that beautiful, warm place of love? And so that's why I will always refer to it as the houseless. And thank God a lot of people just really caught up on that. And it has made the difference. And I'm just glad about it. But serving and helping only that community, then, it will grow in that way. And that's why this is a very different program, because it's for all house and on-house community. I hope I help on a little about that question. Was there any other part that you asked? Anything different? Great organization, love it.
Yeah, so yeah, there were Food Not Bums is more geared toward the homeless people. So there may be in a
Yes.
park or something where they know that everyone's going to come every Sunday or something to get the food. But this is different where,
Yes.
you know, I can see people, you know, just on their lunch break coming down from the office building and grabbing the stew. That's where it can grow even more. And then I guess I haven't been involved with all the conversations, but I guess what I envision is that there would have to be some kitchen somewhere rented, and then to be able to make this mass amount, and then I'm envisioning it going to these little
David,
hut.
are you David? Yes.
His name is James. No, Sister Ivy forgot to mute. I'm going to mute you, Sister Ivy. And I was just joking when I said his name. He's just talking to someone else. Go ahead, James.
I'm sorry. I was going to say this. I'm sorry. And I'm here trying to get something done, but listening to all the wonderful things here. So I haven't gotten done. And I thought I saw a friend that I haven't seen like for 2 years. Sorry about that. I'm so sorry. I was ready to say this. Actually, there's no renting on the kitchens. People just, as far as I know, I never heard a kitchen rented, and I just think it's so wonderful. I need to share this. It's just someone always offers the kitchen. I used to go to an intentional community, which is another absolutely wonderful new way, but it's kind of old actually, but just brought in the new modern way. And so it used to be an intentional community with a lot of people uh, just will go and cook in there. And, you know, it was the community kitchen. So it was fine to do all the cooking and stuff. Very beautiful experience. If you want a wonderful experience, I think that's one way to have one. And meet nice people. And of course, it's all vegan. And if you go to their website and you read their history, it is completely amazing. So I really recommend that. Thank you for bringing that beautiful work. It's just amazing. Yeah, just go to the website with this just the same name and you'll see all that. But there's no renting, there's no paying, there is nothing. It just works the same way we do. Picking food from the farmers market, and then all volunteer, and then the volunteers also, it might be another group. Usually it's another group of volunteers that goes, sometimes a combination of the ones that cook and the ones that, you know, the ones that go and actually give away the food. And it's usually to the parks. Yes, it's a little bit different from what Rio Uno does, because we go to the camps where the houses live. And they go to usually to parks. So very wonderful program. Thank you for bringing that.
Sure. Yeah, I guess, but I was thinking, you know, with this stew, that it could be, it's eventually going to be so big that there'll be, you know, in big cities, there's going to be a big kitchen needed. And then there's going to be distribution to each of these locations. And I don't know, I just envision this like kind of like a little building, like a Dutch Brothers coffee shop. And it's low cost, as low cost as possible in the beginning. And then it's going to get bigger and bigger. But yeah, if it's so convenient for people, they would actually go and drive in or get in line at this little place instead of going to McDonald's, because it's free. on top of that. And there's going to be some trends. There's going to be some people who just say, I want my French fries. I'll be willing to pay them. There's going to be a lot of people just wanting the convenience of fast, free food that's healthy.
Well, that sounds really, really nice. Brother Jamie, may I welcome Davidson again?
Oh, absolutely. I just welcomed Davidson in the chat. Welcome, Davidson. Welcome back. And now Marco wants French fries. Yeah, welcome back, Davidson. We're talking food healers. Oh, and Christopher's had his hand up for a while. Go ahead, Christopher.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel that what we're after here is more of a roots level radical change to society and not a symptoms Band-Aid approach where we're looking at just trying to feed people. And so evaluating its effectiveness at the surface level doesn't encompass what the total benefit of this program is. This is a radical, it's like dropping a love bomb on the system here. You know, in some senses, it could be argued that, you know, the feeding people is almost just sort of the surface, and there's all sorts of additional effects, or I want to say effects off to the side that are affecting root level change in society. It's a sign to everybody that everybody should be taken care of. It shows that that's possible. It is a direct affront to the wealthy elites that have been trying to keep us within the industrial paradigm that Ray was talking about. It's what Jamin had mentioned earlier, that it's a functional basic income. I mean, you don't have to go buy the food, it's already made for you, but that does free up, it frees up the income that you would have otherwise had to have spent on the basic necessity of eating. So yeah, I mean, it's hard to perceive all the benefits, but I have this sense that it's we're evaluating it at a surface level, whereas it's much more radical, the benefits there, and much more related to what Ray was talking about. You know, do we really need to be in this industrial paradigm from the 1800s where you know, we need to be working 40-hour work weeks to keep cranking along here? The answer is unequivocally no. I mean, the smartest people right now attest to that. Tesla, or not Tesla, Elon Musk is saying as much himself. He's an advocate for basic income because essentially the machines are doing most of the labor for us at this point. So it's a question of how do we want to distribute that power to people. It's coming mostly from machines, the labor, including a lot of intellectuals. It's not just labor, but a lot of jobs, even clerk jobs, are now going to the machines. Artificial intelligence is going to be picking up all the slack in a lot of areas, and people are going to be losing their jobs. So we're going to be forced into this position. So we're already moving towards a post-scarcity economy in certain senses. How do we want to manifest that? This is a powerful message towards manifesting that, I think. And so, yeah, again, I think it's a mistake to evaluate this just at the level of how it's going to feed people, and look at how there's other programs that are already doing that.
What was that? I think a couple weeks ago or so, there was somebody had mentioned there's a specific sign that they put in front of their food distribution table, and like it quadrupled the amount of people that came, and it had something to do with it had the word love in there. Do you guys remember? Maybe Jason?
Love all, feed all, and the example is from England. Yeah, and it was Hemel in England, and they'd been doing this for a long time, and they put love all, feed all, and suddenly, I think like in one day, they got like more donations than they had gotten like in the previous year or something like that. So just with that one sign, love all, feed all.
Yeah, I think that I think that's a very good sign. I don't know if we can, adopt the same sign that, maybe in these locations. Yeah, it's more than just feeding people. I agree. It's a matter of what was the term he said? Love bomb, right? So now people can come here. Maybe everyone wants to. They can sit around and eat if they want, and they can also volunteer. And then they just get the idea that they're actually getting food without using this cash that this imaginary, thing, this fiat currency or whatever that they've sat in the office and worked all day for. So it's actually a change of mind or a mindset change. So yeah, I think that's beautiful.
My parents were both school teachers, and they, in the early years, they worked with at a Hutterite colony. Sort of like, you're probably more familiar with Mennonites, but it's essentially a German sect that was to maintain the old ways, and they had a dinner hall. So all the meals were in one hall, and everybody ate together, even though they had their own living spaces. And they were just automatically fed. Anybody that was part of the community just went there and was fed, no questions asked. And that sense of community is what I keep thinking of. Is something that would be so valuable to have, because in our society there's so much separation of people, that I think that building that kind of community is so important. Because if you're willing to eat with somebody, you're obviously saying that you're the equal. If you're at the table with somebody, you can imagine, some people making $200,000 a year. If they're sitting down at a table with anybody who's part of their community, it's now establishing we are all the same. And there's just so much inequality in our society, that this is one way that we start to visualize. It doesn't solve the problem, but it's one way that we visualize that it's something that we really want to solve. Because there's really a disease. It's a mental disease that everybody is either rich or they want to be rich. So anybody that, when it comes down to it, or when our society says, well, what should we do? Should we tax the rich? Everybody who's rich says no. Everybody who's poor but buys lottery tickets says no, because they're going to be rich someday. Didn't you know? Right? So we have this, and I kind of boil it down to lottery tickets as that kind of a disease, because I think it is a bad way to live, where you're always just one scratch ticket away from a completely different lifestyle. And that means that our idea of success is when we become millionaires. That has to change, because that doesn't make people happy. It very rarely makes the millionaires happy, but it certainly makes the inequality of our society a place where everybody can be miserable together.
Ray, thank you for sharing. You always bring all these very great thoughts. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I just wanted to ask Davidson if you heard that we welcomed you. We didn't hear from you, so just letting you know. But we were glad to see you and glad that you're here, and just making sure that you heard us and we didn't hear from you, which is okay if you don't want to.
I think Davidson's busy riding his bicycle right now. So
Nice bike.
But now that I've got the talking feather, I wanted to throw in kind of a synthesis of ideas. James, I think you mentioned, people coming down from office buildings to, get lunch and then go back up. I've worked for periods of time in downtown San Francisco. I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area, from the East Bay, precisely. I'm also an engineer, James, so I worked for one of the biggest engineering companies in the world in San Francisco. And indeed, at lunchtime, oh my goodness, the office buildings would just, so many people would go down onto the street. The streets would be very crowded. And this combines an idea that Ray just mentioned, which is this egalitarianism. Now, San Francisco, of course, is one of the most liberal cities in the world. It's the birthplace of the gay rights, the modern gay rights movement, birthplace of the computer revolution, and so many revolutions, free speech movement, you name it. San Francisco Bay Area it leads the charts in many, many ways. And because of this liberal culture there, and it's liberal among rich, poor, everyone, I think that's one of the places where people who work in the office buildings in San Francisco would be proud to go and emphasis on support this model, both by being customers and also donating to it. San Francisco, after all, was the city where a young woman who was working in an office building in San Francisco suddenly got the idea to just bring a box of donuts to work one day. And she put a little jar there saying, feel free to contribute to the donut fund. At the end of the day, not surprisingly, all the donuts were gone. That wasn't a big surprise. But what surprised her was that of all the nickels, dimes, $1 bills, and yes, even $5 bills that were stuffed into the jar, the amount of money that was donated exceeded the cost of the box of donuts. So she scratched her head and said, well, that's interesting. I wonder what would happen if I did this as a business. And she did just that. She went to offices up and down Market Street in downtown San Francisco and offered this as a service. It became a profitable business. So with this, that was my original idea of donut economics. Of course, there's now a book called Donut Economics, but that's a whole other concept. But the original donut economics for me was downtown San Francisco, that if you're generous to people and donate the food, whether it's donuts or stew, people's generosity will, in terms of what they will donate to you, will exceed that, because most self-respecting San Franciscans or people from the Bay Area, because this is a cool thing about the downtown San Francisco, people come from all over the Bay Area to work there in the daytime and then go home at night. There's great public transportation, and they will happily donate to that. And they'll probably listen, if the stew is costing us pennies per serving and people are stuffing $5, $10, $20 bills into the donation slot to, again, support it, it can become a huge profit center for food healers. Not that we are seeking to profit individually, but we are seeking to grow and expand. So anyway, this is collective intelligence. We're putting together pieces from different people's comments and coming up with new, really cool ideas, from parking lots at shopping centers to the wide sidewalks of Market Street in downtown San Francisco. So with that, I'm going to pass the talking feather, and I'm going to take my first bio break in 3 hours. So anyway, loving the conversation. I noticed James typed into the chat that he was having some. Okay, James is going to log out and log back in. Anyway, Marco, I know it's getting late for you there. Pass the hosting feather if you need to, and I'll be back in a few minutes after a little break. But we are recording, and we can pause any time, but I think this is just a super cool conversation. So I say we keep it rolling. As far as I'm concerned, it looks like Ray wants to talk. I'll be back in a few. Thanks, everybody.
I wanted to support something that you said, Brother Jeremy. You can stay for a second. No, he can't.
Of course. For you, Sister Ivy, I will hop around and stay.
It's just that you brought this beautiful thing about the generosity of the people. And this is one of the biggest changes that I think we're not bringing that much, really. And you brought it up because our being generous is like, to me, I understand it and believe it, like the biggest source of blessings. And if we can get people to understand this, then and to know this and to try it and see that it works, then it will really change whole communities. Because, you know, people are more about the programming, you know, is more about getting, and we don't find that much about giving. I mean, out there, you know, it's not like advertised everywhere instead of buy this, and all the bombarding. And it is wonderful that this is also going to show people that we are giving and we are not taking anything from it. We are not, you know, I'm sure many of us, just to say that, are not about like looking, searching for anything for us, but it's all about the giving. And so it was great to have brought that. Thank you. About really it is, the more we give, the more we receive. It's amazing. We don't do it for that, but I have to say I've been a witness of that all my life, really, but even more because the more I gave, all my time, everything, my resources, my everything, is really just like, it's just the least I had to take care about anything for me. It's just amazing. I'm just saying this as a testimony to goodness and giving and generosity, and I still have to do a lot more. So I'm just saying in the little that I have done, it's amazing how it just really works that way. And maybe we have to do more emphasis, and I will suggest to put this somewhere about the giving and generosity. I think it was great to kind of have heard that. And it will change also society. So thank you. Thank you. I'm supporting that and bringing that up. And I want to say thank you guys for, you know, staying here, for the host and co-host. Thank you so much for staying here for hours on ending. I mean, this is really amazing work. Thank you so much. And also one little thing I wanted to make sure to welcome. I just saw the, oh, maybe she just left, but it's okay. She's in Canada. She must, oh no, there you are, Miranda.
Miranda.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you were welcome, but I want to make sure we welcome you. It's wonderful that you're back here, and it's beautiful to see the picture again. So hello and welcome. And as we know, nobody has to talk if you are not ready or want to, whatever, but just making sure to welcome you.
Thank you for the welcome. I don't have anything to say yet.
That's fine. Nice to have you here.
I'm Miranda from Canada. If I wave out the window, can you see me? I'm in Toronto.
I'm closer to Ottawa.
Oh, well.
I thank you, Brother Jamin, for I just wanted to support your great thought. And someone else was next, so I'm just making sure to pass it back.
I was going to offset Jamin's story with one where I worked in a church, and one of the employees of the church, their daughter was selling chocolate bars for their school, and they said, "Can we leave a box in the lunchroom, and people can buy them, and we'll just come back at the end of the day." At the end of the day, there was 4 chocolate bars missing, unpaid for, in a church. It was quite scandalous, appropriately. But there's also a school attached to the church as well, so there's suspicions that there might be a few kids snuck in from the school.
But you see, that's a fundamentally different model. There you're saying, hey, chocolate bars for sale. Never mind what the proceeds went to, but they were for sale. Here's the price. With the donuts, it's, hey, help yourself. If you feel like contributing, feel free to contribute. And so people felt the generosity, they felt honored, they felt trusted, and they responded in kind. So it's fundamentally different, but great example.
Both were based on the honor system, but there's that it was a complete giveaway, just based on donations. Then people probably felt more compelled, as opposed to overpriced chocolate bars, because of course the cost of the chocolate bars was way beyond what you'd buy in a store, because they're obviously trying to make some profits for the kids to go on a field trip or something.
Totally. Well, speaking of field trip, I'm going to take a field trip to the bathroom and I shall return. Carry on. We are recording. What a super cool meeting, conversation. All right. I'll be back. Thanks, everybody. See you in a few.
Thank you.
Forrest has his hand up, I think.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, have you guys looked at like business structures to put in this idea into place? I mean, it sounds great. We would love to give whatever it is that we could give to whomever that we could give to. However, the world is what it is, or at least it is in the United States, where, especially considering that you're giving processed foods, it sounds to me like, the goal would be to give a lot of processed foods to people, or to donate a lot of processed foods to people. And being the powers that be, I mean, I would imagine that would create some problems. I know it would definitely where I'm leaving from in California. The government is extremely strict on that. The local government is extremely strict on that.
Are you talking about the stew model? Because that's entirely
that's right.
Plant-based, no processed food at all. It's buying lentils.
It has to be but there's a process in order to make a stew, right? I'm assuming you're going to add heat to the lentils. That would fall under processed or packaged foods. At least it does where I'm leaving. So, that's exactly what I was referring to. I mean, it sounds great. We would love to do it. And we could say, I'm going to do a workaround, work around this local government entity this way, or work around the local government entity that way. However, after so many warnings, at least that's the case in Southern California, you're going to start to incur a lot of costly fines.
Yeah, this is something that's been tried yet to see what sort of opposition we get. And that was one of the questions I was going to ask Sister Ivy, because you did work with Food Not Bombs, which I'm most familiar with when they're talking about the resistance that they get from the city. So, and of course, because they're feeding homeless, it creates a lot of different kinds of issues than what we would face. Part of which is, part of it is showing them up. If you're able to feed the population in ways that the government has not been able to do, they don't like being shown up in that kind of way. Noam Chomsky talks about it, the problem of a good example. And I think it was the founder of Food Not Bombs that was talking about that. A lot of this, they've worked through those issues. So learning as much as we can about Food Not Bombs and where they have been and what sort of things they've encountered is probably really good research for us to do. And it really comes down to per city, because it's going to be some places that are a lot more sensitive to homeless people. Toronto is terrible. We've had a history of shipping out our homeless people. Yeah, we do get a lot of influx of French Canadians from Montreal, so there's kind of a migration of homeless people, and they sometimes try to send them back. And they've got all the sort of put up obstacles to loitering under the overpass and things like that. But it's going to be really different from city to city. In some senses, bigger cities are more familiar with these problems and are more able to deal with it than smaller cities, where they try to think of themselves as not having a homeless problem. So when it appears, then it becomes more of a big deal, and they kind of think their parks are for walking their dogs rather than having any homeless people spoiling that experience. So we have to be realistic going into it, but it's not really a reason to stop. We have to try the way, and then if that doesn't work, try something else. And I also suspect that a lot of the reasons why I hear the worst of the worst about Food Not Bombs and what they've encountered is because it makes good storytelling. And some of it is told in the past tense. This is stuff that they've accomplished. A lot of pressure that they got for not having the right permits. And then the story that I heard was that they went through all the steps, made the permits perfect as they possibly could, and still were given a lot of harassment from the police. And then they said, look, we did everything exactly to the letter, and you're still giving us a hard time. So clearly there's some other agenda going on here. Sister Ivy, which city did you work with Food Not Bombs?
Were you asking me or the other lady?
No, it's Sister Ivy.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
I did a video about Food Not Bombs a long time ago, but again, it was sort of you get more of a sense of what resistance you get rather than what successes. And ultimately, in the end, they were successful and popular and managed to spread to many different cities.
Yes, that's a good idea you have, though, to see what kind of problems they had, even though this is sort of a different model, because there's going to be similar problems that we run into. You know, I'm sure that one of them is going to be, they want to have a certain requirement of, that's why I was mentioning these kitchens. I think that any food that's sold has to have like this certain kitchen, or the food has to be prepared. Like I know when people are making food out of their house, that's frowned upon for some reason, because they don't trust it. Yeah.
I know that Jamin said that his vision was to have a truck, like even like a dairy truck, like a big milk truck, with but keep the ingredients need to be cooked, the lentils and rice or whatever kind of grains, to cook them and chill them to room temperature or to refrigerated temperature, and add the vegetables cold to that mix, and then keep it refrigerated to the point of delivery. So these are packages that you would give to people. They'd come out with their pots, and you'd have some sort of decanting system, or you would have prearranged trays. We're trying to work out a way that would be most eco-safe and eco-friendly without having too much recycling and too many plastic products or whatever.
Yeah.
So that was one of the solutions, was try to serve it at largely uncooked, the vegetables uncooked, and the lentils and rice nominally cooked whatever kind of beans and rice and grains. I actually don't know what the legalities of that. It's interesting to know that as soon as you cook something, it's considered processed. So yeah, who knows? And there may be different rules for different states and provinces and even communities.
Yeah, in Michigan, a few years back, they enacted what they call the cottage food law, or the cottage business law, rather. And if you want to sell food products processed in your home, all you have to do is label them with a label that says this was not inspected under, by the health department or the USDA. It was cooked in my home kitchen. You put your name, address, and contact information. And as long as you had less than $15,000 income, it was legal to do that in your home. It was to help with the economy.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. I think it's come up in conversation before. Maybe you've said it before, and that's why.
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah.
And Jamin has mentioned that there's Samaritan laws that when it's for a good cause that everybody understands that there's some rules that can be bent or broken, but there's probably a certain degree of scrutiny that they want to get into, especially food handling, because I know there's for any sort of catering they want to have food handler certificates for the people that are handling the food, and that they're in commercial kitchens. And that there, some events insist on having insurance as well. So if anybody gets food poisoning, that the event is not going to be sued, but the individual retailer could be sued. So they want them to have insurance.
Yes, I can. Oh,
Go
I
ahead.
was going to say, I can say to that, the Samaritan rule is a very wonderful thing, because it just basically protects people that want to give and help that people give, because they know they are protected and they're not going to be, so it is a wonderful, to me, it is a wonderful thing. Of course, I have a lot to do with that. And I think it brought a lot of people into giving and helping, because they didn't, it put away the fears about what's going to happen to me if someone says this, that, or whatever. So I'm very grateful for that, Samaritan.
And we've gone through a pandemic, and there's no reason to suspect that we won't have more until we change our greater systems. So we need to be able to be resilient in these times. And I think some of these laws need to be really tested, because there are ways that you could develop community through food and develop resilience through food. And right now, everything is geared towards commercial precision, which has its purpose, but ultimately, I think there's merit in communities being able to feed themselves, because those systems can break down too. And that's, I'm with the environmental groups in Toronto, and a lot of what they talk about is resilience within the city, being able to feed ourselves, which some of it sounds a little bit far-fetched, that you'd be able to feed Toronto with rooftop gardens and so forth. It's all good and worthy of pursuit, but Forrest, as a farmer, I don't know how you feel about cities thinking that they could cut out the middleman and feed ourselves with food grown in parks and front lawns and rooftop gardens.
Free, they would have a hard time. I've worked with political organizations to try to set it up in parks, and it just gets too complicated. See, that's the whole problem, is you're always dealing with complex systems, and somebody wants to get involved. So realities are, is we live in this world where we have enough resources to take care of everyone. However, the world is in the state that it's in, right? It's, you know, it's the individual, whether it's their ego or whatever the case is, but they're just complex systems and it won't work. However, urban farming is extremely doable, extremely easy, based on my experience in building out aquaponics or hydroponic systems. You can meet mass production at a relatively inexpensive price point in your build out if you have that experience. You know exactly what it is that you're looking to build and do. Anyway, that's, I guess, all I can comment on that. But once you're dealing with these complex systems, it's that's why from the very beginning I tried to ask about its practicality for this idea, especially as a stepping stone for the greater good, because it just seems like a small, minute piece to the big picture of, well, how do we get to planet wellness? And I guess that's about all I can say on the matter.
Jamin, while you were gone, Forrest brought up the issue that if as soon as food is cooked, it's quite often considered to be processed. I said our stew is planned to be a plant-based and whole foods as far as the recipe goes, but there's as soon as something is cooked. So if I said you're planning on serving it cold, but you cook the lentils and rice and beans beforehand and mix in the cold cut vegetables to be delivered, dispensed, and then they heat up the stew and consume it in our household delivery model. Do you know anything about that? Are we relying on the Samaritan laws, or is this going to be something that we just jump through the hoops every city that we encounter? Every time we try to spread it to a new place, it's a learning process. And this is also something that I wanted to ask if some of these issues have already been encountered by Food Not Bombs, and they already know which cities are the ones that have the laws that make things easy, which ones will still work when you just hammer them through.
Yeah. So first of all, in terms of delivering it cold, the original idea was for home delivery or neighborhood delivery, and indeed, the idea is we cook the stuff that needs to be cooked, like beans and rice, then refrigerate those ingredients, the cooked ingredients, refrigerate them, then mix them in with the cold, washed and chopped produce, mix it all up so it's all cold, deliver it cold. That way it keeps the longest, etc. And you heat it up at home. Now, of course, for serving it up for people to eat on the spot, whether in downtown San Francisco or the Dutch Brothers coffee model or in city parks, as we're planning to do in Los Angeles, we would heat it up and serve it hot. So two different models. As to your second question, definitely the Good Samaritan laws work in our favor. Nonetheless, we will seek to, the ideal is we never have to rely on those laws. We really just do things absolutely 100%, safe and healthy from the get-go and in every case. And of course, the fact that the foods are 100% plant-based helps us out tremendously, because most foodborne, illnesses, spoiled food, bacteria growth, and all that, dairy is legendary for the growth of bacteria and whatnot, whereas plant-based is the safest stuff you can possibly have. So that's also hugely in our favor. And since we're basically taking a city by city approach, we'll definitely work within the city laws and actually seek to build relationships with city government, starting in Los Angeles, we're starting with Parks and Rec, because that's kind of the problem, that's very strategic for a lot of reasons. But in general, we'll work with all aspects of all facets of city government, for many, many reasons, not the least of which is to be 100% compliant with laws, etc. And if others have more to add to that, please do. I know Marco's had his hand up for a bit. And yeah, thank you. Going on mute. Good stuff.
Yeah,
So is this about the same thing, the same exact thing? I have something to share about the same thing. That's why I'm asking. But anyway, either way.
yeah, I think I forgot my main point for raising my hand, but I'll just touch on the Good Samaritan laws. Now we have them in Michigan, and it arose, I think in Michigan, it arose out of a lawsuit, something where somebody was having a heart attack and somebody did CPR and broke some ribs, and for saving the guy's life, they got sued. So they, created the Good Samaritan laws, and they've kind of been abused. If whenever there's been like a medical, like a medicine that's caused damage to people, and class action suits are filed, people that live in Michigan are excluded because of our Good Samaritan laws. Protect the corporations have used them to protect themselves from their faulty drugs, where in other states, they can be sued. If you're in Michigan, you can't be part of those class action suits. So everything has its upside and its downside. And I'm complete for now.
Okay, I was going to share that I haven't heard of any problem, anyone with any problem, but I would think there has been some, but I am just saying I have never heard of anything happening because it helped and this and that about the food. I just haven't, and I've been so involved in the last over a decade, but surely there's some, but so it's pretty safe. It's pretty safe here. I also wanted to add about what Brother Damien said, that also starting with the parks here is also because it was really kind of the way we were led, that just open up like that. Of course, thanks to Sister Sarah that was, looking around and whatever. But I also just say that's got to be very safe, because this is the way that we were led. It was like right here, this boom boom, that kind of thing. So I'm very grateful for that, and I'm sure it's safe. One of the things that has always helped with our organization is that so much love, just the love makes it safe. It is what I can say from my experience. Just the loving makes it safe. It gets the fears out of the way, which is what makes a lot of trouble. When people already, I'm just sharing my personal view, but when people already get into helping on whatever it is, it doesn't matter, already with the fears that something is going to happen, or already with all these false thinking that we have been brought up, oh, you go help someone and you get in trouble and all these things, which all of us, I'm sure, heard, because this is from generation to generation pass on, another of those terrible things that are not helping and didn't help humanity. And it is just oh yeah, okay, go ahead and help and get in trouble, but blah blah blah, you know. And instead of the actual real truth. And so I haven't seen any of those, which is wonderful, you know. It's a good amount of years and never heard that. So just wanted to offer that.
What does that sign say again, Jason?
Oh,
About
love all,
love-
feed all. Love all,
love
feed
all
all.
people. Well, you know, your story about the San Francisco donations, it reminded me, there's a farmer's market here in Phoenix. And one of the stands of the farmer's market, they have a group of people that what they do is they help out kids that have problems, and they teach them how to farm, and the kids pick all the fruits and vegetables in these big farms, and then they help sell them at the farmers market. But here's the thing, the selling, when they sell them, there's no price on anything. So I went over there and I said, I looked at, they had some cantaloupes and some zucchini and some other tomatoes and things I picked out. And I basically picked out like a cantaloupe and a couple of zucchinis and a tomato. And I said, okay, how much is it? And they said, oh, it's by donation. And then she explained to me what they do. And then I think I paid like $30, you know, for a few pieces of fruits and vegetables. But I didn't care because, you know, I knew that the donation was going toward a good cause. So I could see that, you know, having a sign that says, love all, feed all, and also this mentality, these people that are coming, that there's just people are going to drop $20 here, left and right. Maybe people will drop $100. Some people will put $10 or $5 for a bowl of stew. And especially just with that idea of the whole thing being a love, a community thing.
Yeah, totally. Generosity breeds generosity. And generosity and trust breeds more generosity and trust and good feeling.
And I know you're fairly new, but you know, the name of the program is Community Cafe, sponsored by We Are Uno. I mean, I understand you love that name, and we do it too, but that's, you know, the program in England. And so yeah, I'm just letting you know, it is called Community Cafe, which is I think a very wonderful name too.
Yeah, okay, Community Cafe. And what was the second part? Sponsored by, what'd you say? Community Cafe.
Sponsored by We Are Uno, which is the organization Sister Ivy founded there in Los Angeles.
Oh, okay. So I think I see the need here for a social media video on this. And the social media, the purpose of social media is to bring awareness to it, to make sort of a big viral video, something that's very fast and entertaining, kind of like Mass Daily does. And also maybe some suggestion for donation at the same time.
Great idea. Great ideas.
I was gonna hop
All
in and
right.
say,
Looks like we got. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Christopher.
yeah, just that we're talking a lot about how generosity here is sort of a signal flag and is transformational, but also I think just the mechanics of doing it will sort of fly in the face of those who say, where's the profit coming from? Like, how is this being done without, the standard mechanics that an organization like this might run on? How is this going to work? And once this is achieved, it's going to blow people's mind in that regard. The people that don't necessarily focus on the generosity factor, or that aren't necessarily directly benefited by that, are going to be shown that it's possible to do, and they'll also be possibly more critically, they'll be disproven, because I think their voices in our society, that line of argument is sort of generally accepted, that something like this can't be done, that it can't be done for a bunch of different reasons, and once it's shown otherwise, I think that's radically transformational in and of itself. It's implicit in the whole operation, I think.
Thanks, Christopher. Good stuff. And Forrest, you had your hand up.
Well, yeah, it was a little bit, off topic. I was just wondering, is there additional schedule for the evening? Yeah, I don't see the practicality or functionality. This is things that the human being has been doing and trying to do so many years. It's such a long time. And there's so much of this that's already existed, that already exists, and they've relatively reached an economies of scale. And I just wanted to try to catch some of the other topics, or will there be any other topics?
Yeah, so we are now almost 16 hours into the 24-hour collective intelligence block party, and the later we get at night, the less structured this becomes. And I usually peter out around this time, so there's nothing really on the agenda at this point going forward. So it's whatever we make of it.
Hey, can you tell me when this happens again? Because I always get a message from Sarah. That's how I know. But how do I know when this is on?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you're welcome and invited to give me your email address if you'd like, and then I'm happy to put you on the email list.
Oh, yeah, okay.
We have, we have, this is the 55th 24-hour collective intelligence block party. And it starts every Friday at 7 a.m. Pacific time, going a full 24 hours till 7 a.m. Saturday morning. And the day before, we have a program called the press conference, which is every Thursday from 11 a.m. Pacific time until around 6 p.m. or so. And but this Zoom channel is also open almost 24/7, I would say, in that there's usually someone here or a group of people here, and people kind of come and go, and the idea is that we keep the conversation going, and lots of conversations going, and we sometimes have breakout rooms that folks can go into. And our larger vision and mission is cultivating a whole network of conversations, ones that we operate here as well as others in other networks, other groups. And we have a vision of connecting all these together. So if you think of a single conversation as analogous to a single neuron in the brain, think of the whole network of conversations as this giant distributed virtual brain covering myriad different topics.
Oh yeah,
And with,
it's exponentially powerful.
oh my goodness, it's collective intelligence evolving to collective super intelligence. That's the big vision.
Sounds good.
James, this is Morris again. Has the group tried to bring on Dr. Bruce Lipton? I know that he speaks a lot about, this new evolution of man, detriments to planet spacing, and this new collective intelligence as far as evolution of what our species is ultimately going to have to move into. And I think he would be a good guest to invite. And this format with the ability to communicate directly and ask questions, and especially, for instance, I'm really grateful when we had Alan Savory on. I really love that guy and what he does. And I think Dr. Bruce Lipton would bring a lot to this, one of these block parties.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, would love to have Bruce Lipton here. So if anyone has, if you or anyone has a contact with him, well, please invite him, and feel free to connect him with me. I will put my email in the chat. Yeah, and in general, we're open to pretty much anyone coming here, as long as they come with the intention of helping in one way or another, or in many ways, to save, heal, and transform life on Earth. Oh, and as to your earlier question about kind of the agenda for later tonight, we, in months past, James Desmond, who's in Ireland, Cork, Ireland, would pick up in the late hours of the night, early hours of the morning Pacific time, because it's 8 hours later there, and would run a program called Irish Breakfast for several hours. So we'll see if James is here in the early hours of the morning to pick up Irish breakfast. He was gone for several weeks for family commitments, but now he's back. So we're very happy to have James Desmond back. And he's definitely a pillar, longtime pillar of the block party and the conversation.
Well, I'll get that up and running shortly, all right, Jim, but it won't be this morning, my friend, because it's almost 6 a.m. here now, and I'm just climbing into bed.
No problem, James, no problem. I just wanted to just give a complete answer to the question about agenda, but no expectation, and absolutely no worries there. Just great to have you back on whatever schedule.
I know, man, I'm only taking the piss. But in relation to the conversation that's been going on anyway, I'll just say before I do go to sleep, I understand Forrest's kind of apprehensions and where he's coming from, in the sense of like that he's thinking that the food healers is not the key, like it's not going to solve all and all that. Like obviously it's not the key, or it's not going to solve all, but it is in a sense a key to a beginning, we have to start somewhere. But as Christopher said there as well, it influences in so many other different ways as well. It's not just about putting good nourishment into people's stomachs and into those that don't have it. It's also about passing on this message of love and giving as well, and opening up people's minds to a new idea of thinking. And when people start to realize that, change starts to begin from somewhere, and it has to begin somewhere. And in relation to, all the other problems, well, yes, we have to get on with all the other problems as well simultaneously. And there's no one idea is good enough, and there's no one idea that's bad enough, because all ideas, if they're in the, if they're directed in the, in the direction of healing and transforming life on earth, then they're all good ideas. And everything anyway has to be implemented now. There's no holding back anymore. Everything has to be thrown at it. Like the whole kitchen sink has to be thrown at it. So everybody who's interested or engaged in their own way, whether that's through the food healers, the SRM, or any other form of charity or helpful work, that's the way it should be going. And as regards to the, the work, generally all over the world, we have a 40-hour week work, 45-hour week work. If you broke that, if you created a universal wage and you broke the week work rate down to 15 hours a day or 15 hours a week, then you'd give 3 people one person's job. That means everybody has a sense of worth, but the obligation is that they have 15 hours of work, of certain work, but they also have to then donate 10 hours to community work in their week as well for that universal wage. Thus getting involved in their communities then and everything else in whatever way they feel that they can benefit our communities, bringing communities together, but letting people, alleviating the stress of finding someone to mind your children and everything, the stress of having to work too many hours just to pay the bills and put the food put the food in your children's mouths. All these problems can be alleviated by dividing the problem up. There's not enough jobs and too many people. Well, break down the hours and give everybody something to do. So, there's ways around it, but the point is we have to start somewhere, and the food healers is the right direction, and we need to start it, and everything has to be thrown at it then after that. Like. Anyway, I'm going to say good night because my voice is so hoarse.
All right, James. Thank you so much, brother. Have a great night. And
Thank you, Brother James, for what you just said about our program. Thank you. That was very kind.
You're welcome, Sister Ivy.
Good night, Miranda.
I'll talk to you all anyway at some stage tomorrow, probably.
James, welcome. Have a good night.
Good to have you back, James.
Take care, man. Take care. God bless all of you. Anyway.
Thank you, James. God bless. And Miranda as well. Have a great night.
I'm not going anywhere. I was saying good night to James.
Okay.
I just didn't say night, James.
Gotcha.
Sorry.
All right, man. Yeah, same here. I'm not going anywhere.
In complete thought.
My eyelids are getting heavy. I gotta go. Have a good night.
I'll stay a while anyway, but I'll just stay.
Good to have you. Come back.
All right, Ray. Have a good night, Ray.
Great. Thanks a lot.
Night, Ray.
See you soon.
Ray, good night.
Night, Ray.
See you, Ray.
Reminds me of that old show. I think what was it called? The Waltons back in the 70s, where everybody would say good night, good night, John boy, good night.
That is funny. Yes, and good night and good night. That's funny. Thank you for bringing that up. The Waltons, yes.
We're kind of a cross between the Waltons and Hollywood Squares.
I was going to say we're like a cross between the Waltons and Beavis and Butthead, but anyway, we all have our own interpretations.
Oh boy, both funny. But
good night,
Beavis. Fire's good.
whatever names or shows you guys are talking about, but I can tell you, I really feel like in my living room with some really good friends that care about the same things that I care, that are so like-minded, that is just wonderful to be with. I just wanted to share that, but now I'm not, that's not the situation in the living room, so it's been kind of funny because I've been trying to get to these places and, one thing that would have taken me 20 minutes, it took me like an hour and a half with these conversations. We're not recording, are we?
Actually, we are recording, but I'm going to pause right